44 degrees. Not a typo. Not a joke. That is a temperature some of the biggest stars in tennis are about to walk into, and even Iga Swiatek looked genuinely stunned when she heard the real number. If you think tennis is just about forehands and backhands, this match day might change your mind, because what is coming on day 10 in Melbourne could turn into a physical survival test, and we already saw a preview of the danger with Jannik Sinner barely escaping disaster earlier in the tournament. Swiatek had just cruised into quarterfinals, barely breaking a sweat on the scoreboard, when she found out that the next day in Melbourne was forecast to hit a ridiculous 44 degrees Celsius, and her reaction said everything about how serious this is. She thought it was going to be 42. That already sounds brutal. Then she was told, no, it is 44, and her face instantly shifted from casual to shocked, like she had just been told the court would be made of lava. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. She basically admitted she had no idea what she was going to do with that kind of heat coming. And this is a player who has won multiple Grand Slams and is known for being one of the most physically prepared athletes on tour. And here is where the story gets bigger than just Swiatek, because she is not even scheduled to play that day. She was talking about a rest day. The real concern is for the players who actually have to compete in those conditions. We are talking about Coco Gauff, Carlos Alcaraz, Aryna Sabalenka, Alexander Zverev, some of the most explosive high-intensity players in the sport, all expected to push their bodies to the limit, while the air itself feels like it is burning. Swiatek even turned her attention to the fans, basically hoping everyone in the stands would be okay, and that little comment tells you everything about how extreme this situation feels on the ground in Melbourne. When players start worrying about the crowd's well-being, you know the conditions are not just uncomfortable, they are potentially dangerous. And this is exactly where the Australian Open's famous heat rule starts looming over the entire tournament. Because we already saw what can happen when the temperature spikes, and it nearly ended the campaign of the defending champion in dramatic fashion. Jannik Sinner walked onto Rod Laver Arena early in the event as one of the clear favorites, a two-time defending champion, looking calm and in control, and then suddenly his body started sending very different signals. He lost the first set in a match that most people expected him to dominate, then clawed his way back into it. But by the third set, something looked seriously wrong. His movement slowed. His legs looked heavy. Then the cramping started. At one point, he could barely move properly between points. This was not normal fatigue. This looked like a body overheating and shutting down in real time on one of the biggest stages in tennis. His opponent sensed it too and started pushing harder, stretching rallies, making Sinner run, and you could almost feel the tension in the arena as people realized this was turning into a medical battle as much as a tennis match. Then the officials stepped in. Play was suspended. The heat rule came into effect. The roof was closed. Suddenly, the match had a reset button, and that pause may have saved Sinner's entire tournament. When play resumed, the momentum had shifted. His opponent's rhythm was gone. Sinner had time to cool down, recover, and somehow he turned the match around and escaped in 4 sets. But let's be honest, that was a warning sign, a flashing red one. And now, just days later, the forecast says the temperature is going even higher. This is why Swiatek's reaction matters so much. She is not dramatic for no reason. She understands how fine the margins are at this level, and how quickly extreme conditions can flip a match or a tournament upside down. Think about Alcaraz's game for a second. Explosive sprints, long, grinding rallies, constant changes of direction. Now imagine doing that in 44-degree heat, with the sun reflecting off the hard court like an oven tray. Or Coco Gauff, whose speed and defensive skills are built on relentless movement. How much does that style cost physically when every breath feels heavier and every changeover becomes a desperate search for shade and cold towels? Sabalenka brings raw power, but power also demands energy. Long service games, heavy hitting from the baseline, emotional intensity. Heat drains all of that faster than people realize. And then there's the mental side, which nobody talks about enough. Extreme heat does not just hit your legs. It hits your decision-making, your patience, your ability to stay calm under pressure. We have seen matches in Melbourne before where players start rushing points, going for low-percentage shots, or mentally checking out because their body is screaming louder than their game plan. That is where upsets are born, not just from better tennis, but from better survival. Swiatek, even though she is not on court that day, basically sent a message to everyone. Be careful, respect the conditions, because this is not business as usual. And here's the part that really fascinates me. Grand Slams are supposed to be about who plays the best tennis. But days like this turn them into something else entirely. Who manages their body the smartest? Who hydrates better? Who controls their emotions when everything feels harder than it should? We could be looking at a day where tactics take a back seat to endurance, where medical timeouts, ice vests, and heart rate become as important as first serve percentage. And do not forget the scheduling element. Some players will get day sessions under the peak sun. Others might benefit from later starts. Those little differences could quietly shape the semifinals lineup. Now, let me be clear about one thing. The tournament does have protocols. The heat rule exists for a reason. Officials monitor conditions. Roofs can close. Play can be suspended. But as we just saw with Sinner, sometimes the damage starts before the intervention. A few games too long in brutal heat can empty the tank in a way that is hard to refill, even with a break. That is why Swiatek's shock felt so real. She was not playing to the camera. She was reacting like an athlete who knows exactly what 44 degrees can do to a human body during elite competition. And there's another layer here that makes this even more intense. This is the business end of a Grand Slam. Quarterfinals. Every player left believes they can win the title. No one is going to step on court thinking about taking it easy. They're going to fight for every point, dive for every ball, push through discomfort, because this is what they have trained their entire lives for, which also means they might ignore early warning signs from their body. A little dizziness, a bit of cramping, slight nausea. In normal conditions, you can ride that out. In extreme heat, that can escalate fast. I would not be surprised at all if we see at least one match on this day where the heat becomes the main storyline, not the scoreline. Maybe it is a favorite struggling unexpectedly. Maybe it is an underdog who handles the conditions better. Either way, this is where champions show a different kind of strength. Not just shot making, but self-control, knowing when to slow down between points, when to shorten rallies, when to protect energy instead of chasing highlight reels. And honestly, this could even influence the rest of the tournament. A brutal 4-hour battle in 44-degree heat can leave scars that last into the semifinals. Even if the player wins, recovery becomes harder. Sleep is affected. Muscles stay heavy. Suddenly, the next round opponent has a hidden advantage just by having an easier path through the furnace. So when Swiatek says that is crazy, she is speaking from experience. She has played long, physical matches in tough conditions. She knows that the weather can become an invisible opponent that no one can hit winners against. And for the fans watching, it is going to be dramatic, no doubt. But it is also worth remembering what the players are dealing with out there, because this is not just entertainment. It is elite athletes pushing their limits in extreme environments. We all love 5-set thrillers and 3-hour epics. But on a day like this, sometimes the smartest performance might look less spectacular and more strategic, more controlled, more about survival than style. The big question now is simple. Who adapts best? Who respects the heat instead of fighting it? And who might pay the price for underestimating just how brutal Melbourne can be? Because if Sinner's scare was a warning shot, day 10 could be the real test. And by the end of it, the Australian Open draw might look very different from what we expected when the tournament began. So I want to hear from you. Which player do you think handles extreme heat the best? And could the temperature actually decide who makes the semifinals this year?